I think the biggest opportunity we have is the fact that the man at the end of the panel has been gracious enough to give us a year to find the next superintendent. So we don't have to do it in a rush. We don't have to, be in panic mode. We have plenty of time. We know this is going to happen, and that we as a community have the chance to decide what that leader should look like and advocate with the school board members to make sure that that's the selection. So you have 3 of them in the audience today, and it takes a majority of them to choose a new superintendent. And I think that articulating what the community wants. I think that Superintendent Akins did a fantastic job last year of engaging the business community in a way it hadn't been engaged before in support of our schools. And we're going to need someone who not only does that, but can have the inward focus to deal with the fact that we have a lot of issues in our schools that have to be addressed. We have more struggling schools than any other district in the state, and so that's a challenge, but also an opportunity to bring in a leader who knows how to turn around schools and could possibly, bring some energy to that as well. So I think that's the biggest opportunity we have.
I would certainly echo what Melissa said in terms of opportunities, and I would spend a little bit more time on some of our struggling schools. I think we've spent a lot of time in the last couple of years trying to put a lot more effort and thought into how we bring equity, into how we bring those schools up. This year we've had a great turnout in terms of having a lot more teachers in the classroom. We haven't had as many openings, which is a huge benefit to the district. But I do think this gives us an opportunity, as Melissa said. It's a challenge, and we don't like to see schools not doing well. At the same time, I like to look at it that we can only go up and we can only do better. And so that gives us a big opportunity to meet those kids where they are and to give them what they need, and to, again, make sure people know that our public schools are the best option for all kids in this district.
Good afternoon. So I kind of want to dovetail on what Stephanie said. As an educational institution, our priority is student achievement. And so it's certainly the priority of the superintendent and the board to raise student achievement, to close some of the achievement gaps. We certainly have an opportunity to better or eliminate even some of our perpetually lowest performing schools that continue to be an issue in our district. And so student achievement is, of course, our priority. Equity, of course, and one thing I thought you would say is that we certainly want to focus on teacher recruitment and retention. We have the best students here in Hillsborough County. We want to make sure that we also have the best teachers here in the county as well, and that they stay with us. And so that's a priority. And then, of course, another priority is our transportation system, making sure that we're working on bettering transportation and making sure our kids are getting to school safely.
So I think one of the biggest opportunities right now we have as a school district is to build off the momentum that was just created in our community. I think we just proved something to ourselves as a school district, as a community, as partners, that we can accomplish anything that we put our minds to when we do it with an aligned voice. And I think that's the true opportunity we have right now to prove to ourselves if we can accomplish something that we've never accomplished before as a community. Through the passage of a half-penny sales tax, we can also address the issues in early childhood together, collaboratively, as a community, as a school district. We can address our highest need schools collaboratively through partnerships. We can make sure we're preparing all of our students for the workforce or being college ready. We know we can do that. We have all the people in the room across this community to be able to accomplish anything. And I think the momentum off of our sales tax referendum last year can only now enhance the ability for us to do great things in all those areas.
This one may have a battery issue.
I had introduced her earlier, but I do want to introduce Betty Castor again in the context of chairing, being co-chair of the Oversight Committee on the tax. She is in the room as well, and we appreciate you very much, all the ways that you served our community, including this most recent one. So would y'all give her another welcome? All right, so questions. I'm coming to you, Ron. If you would introduce yourself also in front of the question for the Farmville Committee's sake.
Thank you. Ron Weaver, thank you very much for coming. In putting the action on the ballot, you did it brilliantly and beautifully and quickly, and dealt with an existing state law on the subject of how much had to be studied before it could go on the ballot. Did the Florida legislature try to close the door and make it harder for the next time we try to raise money courageously like that? And I love the way you put it, that we can do anything if we set our mind to it. Is the Florida legislature making it harder next time to do anything that's next in that sort of funding with courage?
Well, I will tell you, when I believe it's been 19 or 20 school districts across the state of Florida have all gone to the ballot because of their capital needs or their operational needs, and they've all been successful. And so that tells me that when we hear the issue around my constituents don't support, the issues, we just proved our constituents in Hillsborough County support education. And I think that's So we did see some legislation start to, in bills, come up in Tallahassee this year to kind of maybe push back a little bit at what's occurring, what's the success of the passage of those referendums. And so I know that right now, currently, there's one that is out there that's requiring the sharing of monies with charters, if that was an operational. As far as our capital referendum is concerned, we have not, legislation did not impact that. But that is going to be something I think we're going to have to watch carefully in the future. Thank you.
So the answer is yes. I mean, if the question is the legislature making it hard for public schools to exist, blah, 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 in any way, shape, or form, the answer is yes. I mean, the answer is yes, and I think that, back to the opportunity thing, we have an opportunity right now, and actually I believe a responsibility to decide what kind of community we want to be and what kind of public funding we want for education. And so, traditionally, public schools have been the most locally controlled entity within government, and the legislature would like to change that. And they'd like to say, you know what, you people at the local level, you pass a tax to support your schools, we're actually going to not allow you to spend the money the way you want to, and that's not okay. And so I think we have to continue to stand up when those things happen and continue to hold our legislators accountable for the fact that when the people say something, the people mean what they say was on the ballot, not what the legislator thinks they wanted to have happen.
I was just, adding to what Melissa said. I do think we've heard from a number of legislators that they have been bothered by the amount of communities taking things into their own hands. And, that is, again, the beauty of the democratic process. I do think here, as Melissa said, our community's proved we support our public schools and we're willing to do what it takes to make sure they are in good physical shape. And honestly, there's some opportunities in the future we might have to look at in terms of millage and other things. Many of our surrounding districts have multiple ways in which they support schools. This half-penny we passed is limited to capital needs, which we absolutely needed and which benefit both students and certainly the people I represent, our teachers and support professionals. But lots of other places have done villages to increase teacher salary, and we're now having that issue in terms of competition with our other area districts.
So I agree with my panelists wholeheartedly. Our board, though, is determined. We're not going to let what's happening in Tallahassee really affect what we need to do here in Tampa and Hillsborough County with education. So we're going to continue to push forward. Our board has been very intentional about meeting with our legislators. We have a phenomenal Hillsborough delegation. And so we understand their perspective, but again, we encourage them to continue to put students first, and funding is an issue here in Hillsborough, and so we want to make sure that we continue to fight. We're now taking care of our capital improvement needs, but we have teachers that we need to take care of. We need teachers with better pay and better salaries, and so we will continue to do what we need to do here in Hillsborough to make sure that everyone is taken care of.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Deborah Belanti. I'm a mom, also a PTA member. Recently I've heard some grumblings that I can see happen in the future when we come to ask our legislature for more money. They're going to say, you get it yourself locally. So how I supported this investment, I support the transportation investment, but if we don't get the money again in the next term, are we going to have to ask our citizens to pay more?
I mean, well, Jeff, do you want to go? I think it's an interesting perspective because what I think we have to make sure we are echoing in Tallahassee is this is a huge economy in Florida, and we are not sharing it locally with schools. We are the third largest state in the nation. We are in the 40s in terms of funding for education. There is more that can be done from Tallahassee. And again, putting communities in the place where they have no choice but to raise money locally is where we've been put over the last 15 to 20 years. If you look at numbers, Florida is not funding at a level that's higher than 2007 when fixed for inflation. I mean, we haven't, from the recession, we're not adding to education in the way we need to. And if we don't do that, yes, you are going to force citizens to have to do something else.
So I come from, I spent 8 years of my career in the federal world, in federal programs in education, where the term supplement, not supplant, is very, very important. That means everything that you do with federal funds must be on top of the responsibility of the state and to take care of funding education. That's exactly what the half-penny sales tax should always be looked at a local level. It's a supplement on top of what we believe the core responsibility is of the state of Florida is to equitably fund education all throughout the state of Florida. So that is the message we have to continue to send. It is the responsibility of the legislature to fund all 67 counties across this state equitably. Anything we choose locally to enhance those services, we can do. And we have every right to do, but we should not be doing the business of what the state should be doing in the first place.
So I think we also have to be very aware that there are only certain things that we can do locally. If you look at kind of the funding stream from Tallahassee to schools, as this massively leaking pipeline that has sprung more and more and more leaks since 2007. So Stephanie brought up that we haven't ever reached that funding mark. Not only have we not reached it, in real dollars, we're 22% behind funding public education from where we were in 2007. We're 12.5% behind and adjusted for inflation in teacher salaries. So imagine if you've taken a 12.5% pay cut, you know, in the last 20 years. That would not be okay for your household, and yet we're asking 27,000 employees in this district to take that pay cut. And so, you know, you look at the fact that we had to go out for referendum dollars because public education construction money has continually been diverted. And so, yes, they're going to keep saying that it's our responsibility, but the Constitution only gives us so many ways to do it. Most of the ways is supposed to be through Tallahassee.
Any other answers there? No.
Hi, Jennifer Motzinger with the Tampa Bay Builders Association. During the campaign, it was brought to light that 32 new schools needed to be built over the next 15 years. So I have two questions. Number one, how much of that money that is coming from the half cent is actually going to be put towards construction of new schools? And in your 5-year work program, how many new schools are you planning to build? How many new schools in the next 5-year plan do you have?
So I know with the half-penny sales tax, there were a few schools. It was a very small percentage because we had so many needs with our HVAC, roof repairs, with regards to the money that is being raised. So I think we had somewhere in the range of 5 to 7 schools that we were kind of planning over the next 10 years to perhaps use that for. But that we have to prioritize our HVACs and all the other deferred maintenance first. That was our first priority. In our 5-year plan right now, it looks like we have about 6 or 7 schools on the horizon that we are considering. We have ATT that is opening up, of course, next year, along with an elementary school. We have a potential middle school on the docket. And South Hillsborough is where it's all happening with regards to our growth. And then, of course, one of the things that's very unique in this county is what's happening now in the inner core of the city. You know, that's where a lot of our empty seats are right now, but yet I'm glad we've kind of kept those empty because the backfill is occurring kind of between downtown and the suburbs will ultimately fill those seats back up.
I think we also have to think about the fact that I believe high school TTT in South County is the last high school to be built with the money from the stadium referendum, that 1/8 of a penny the school district got. And so an eighth of a penny sounds like nothing, but now that eighth of a penny is about to go away too. So we got a penny, but we're gonna lose an eighth of a penny. That a lot of that money went for building schools. And so I think we are gonna have to look at some of the things, and probably not super popular with the Builders Association is to look at impact fees. We are one of the only counties. Okay, fantastic, because we're one of the only counties across the state. I mean, Dr. Dre, who is the Florida Teacher of the Year that comes out of Hillsborough, just went to an Orange County public school, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, wow, they have palaces here for their kids to go to school in. They've also raised impact fees 3 times since the last time we raised impact fees. And so we're gonna have to look at other ways. Again, to Deborah's question about if the legislature's gonna do it, I don't have a lot of faith, so we're gonna have to look at local ways that we can make sure that growth supports itself, because growth supports itself when you allow growth to support itself. Any other answers? Are we good? Okay, Bill.
Richard Stein, this question is directed to the chair. And it's my understanding that on those sessions dealing with the expenditure of this tax money that we impose, that it's been ruled that during a public comments section that would not be allowed to be recorded. Why is that so?
Well, thank you for the question. So our public comments are recorded. The public comments just are not televised. And so that was a decision made by the board of the district, as we have a duty to control the decorum of our meetings. And so it was really time for us to shift how we do our entire meetings. It wasn't just public comment, it was the setup of the entire school board meeting. And so, you know, there's this narrative that there's no transparency. Well, the opposite of transparency is obscurity, right? And so to say that we're obscure in our dealings is absolutely incorrect. All of our meetings are public. They're always open to the public, whether it's public comment, our school board meetings, our workshops. Anytime the board is convened, it's always public. And all of these meetings are always recorded. Anyone has access to the audio recordings of these meetings, but we certainly take our public comment very, very seriously. They're intended for the public to give us, board members, input on items that are being voted on. Oftentimes, with great input, it will really influence our votes. And so we take our public comments very, very seriously. And so with this new change, what we have seen is now things are really working better. We're really getting that great input, and we're getting the feedback that we need. But nothing is closed off. Our doors are open, and everything is recorded.
On this one, I think I do understand why the board looked at doing some things to change their meeting and to bring efficiencies. I absolutely see that, and as somebody who goes to the board meetings, you can always attend. I do have to respectfully disagree with Chair Schamberger that not televising those public comments is a good way to go. And I say that only because it is, you know, I absolutely, again, I am at some of those meetings, I see some of the things that probably bring people to think you don't want to televise it. I mean, I've absolutely seen it. At the same time, democracy sometimes is messy, and I think the public needs to see what other people are saying, because that also then tells you how they were impacted by a vote. But again, she's absolutely right. If you want to see things, you can always see them. You can always get the transcript.
So let me just say this really quick. So one thing we like, even for you, oftentimes you'll come to board meetings, you'll speak publicly. Maybe you want the public to see it, and that's great. But what we like as the board is for you not to just come to board meetings and speak with us, but to reach out to us outside of the board meetings, to talk about some deep issues, meet with us. But you've chosen to only do it during public comment. And so that makes us think, are you really wanting to engage with us? Or are you doing it for the television cameras? We don't want that. We want you to really work with us and come and talk to us about issues that's affecting the teachers. And so we haven't seen that, but we're hoping that by changing this format, that will change.
Any other responses? We're good? Thank you.
Mindy Murphy, Tiger Bay member. Money is always going to be an issue, but I'm particularly interested in hearing what Superintendent, first and foremost, and then the other members of the panel think is the single greatest stumbling block to success besides money.
Well, I think, you know, yeah, money drives everything, and of course you can always go back to that as far as why you can't do certain things. I think, the issues around some of the legislation, that sometimes we have to, implement becomes very problematic, at the local level. Sometimes even unfunded types of mandates that become more challenges. I think that, it's the past few years, I've seen a lot more, community involvement, but I would say parent involvement with regards, especially in our schools that are facing the greatest challenges, is still one of those things that we are still working on solutions around. We know that when a parent comes beside a child, ultimately their education is going to flourish, or they're able to support them. So those are some of the things that are kind of non-monetary legislation, parental involvement, that still kind of are those challenges that we still need to address as a school district to ultimately achieve that success.
I would say one of the biggest challenges that absolutely you can handle this for free is to give teachers back their autonomy. That is a big challenge sometimes in a world where the legislature puts down something new every session, and sometimes it doesn't even mesh with what they did 1 or 2 sessions ago. So that is a complex challenge for the district, but I think we spend a lot of time now trying to turn kids into data and trying to look at all that, and we've lost some of the core things that I think are great in education and are great, that make teachers love their profession, which is to be able to do what they want in their classroom, to know their children, and to know what's going to work to move those kids forward. And that professional respect is absolutely free, but it is lacking.
I like to say also the parental and the community engagement certainly can be a hindrance, and there's a lot of issues outside of the district that we have no control of, like some of the socioeconomic factors. Superintendent Akins, in doing a presentation about our lowest performing schools, the schools that have been turned over to external operators, really expertly laid out how that shift of communities has just continued to move into the center of the county. And if you look at that, it directly overlays with the gentrification that's continuing to happen in our county. And so our highest needs families, although a lot of resources are being put into these communities, until there's some true revitalization of the communities, we're going to continue to experience these generational issues. And so the same group of perpetually low-performing schools and neighborhoods persist. So we can dump programs all day long, but until we really put some revitalization into these areas and stop squeezing in these communities into an abandoned area of the county, we really won't see any change.
So I believe that democracy doesn't create public schools creates democracy. And this is when I get upset, because democracy is under attack in this country. And so because of that, our public schools are under attack, and that's where our children are. And so the greatest threat, the greatest need, the greatest opportunity is for everybody in this room who truly believes in public schools to stand up for them. Whether you call that parent engagement or community engagement, it should be democratic engagement. And we have to have that. The people who would like to privatize public schools have made it very clear that their goal is not a public school left in this state within 10 years. So we have to get serious about defending the institution of public schools. So money is a part of that, but so is legislation, and so is electing people who say, my absolutely #1 issue is to make sure we defend and control public schools.
Hi, my name is Barbara Tepke, and I'm a member of the of the Hillsborough Education Association, retired, and the NEA as well. I firmly believe in the right of employees to organize in a collective bargain for pension and benefits and salaries. So my question to you is, I had heard things about the custodians, and what is your position on supporting custodians, bus drivers, and cafeteria workers to stay as full-time employees of the school board and not be privatized?
So this is an area that, as we look at going back to the funding of public education, so in the state of Florida, in some ways, in public schools, you kind of are hindered on where you can go to look at any kind of cost savings. So, for instance, we have, and it's a good thing, we have class size, which dictates a number of teachers that we have to have in the state of Florida, which we want lower class sizes. So that right there creates some budgetary challenges because of the amount of employees you are now working with to pay. So we want to make sure that they are provided the right pay. So the only way that you look at really finding other kinds of funds is you look at how you operate your school district. So one of the operational areas, other than transportation, is custodial services, food services, and those kinds of places in your organization. So one of the things that our board asked me as a superintendent to do is just look at those areas, and some of this information got a little bit probably going sideways, but it was really more about just a focus on an overall look of the area of custodial services. How can we become more efficient? And are we meeting the national standard on being efficient in cleaning our buildings? How can we do it better? Is there other options out there? So that's what we were asked to do, and so there's different options we're looking at right now. One is we put out an RFP just to kind of get an idea of what that pricing looks like, because we've never even looked at that before. Then I've also worked with our HSEF union to create a centralization option. One that ultimately looks at how we use our own employees in our school district and how we centralize services and become more efficient in our own operations. So right now I have all those proposals in front of me. No decision has been made. It's just literally looking at every single option you have on the table to ultimately bring to the board a recommendation.